Hello, hello. It's JJ from Together We Seek Online. And as I've mentioned many times, we are bringing together fascinating lightworker energy practitioners and healers. And today is one of my favorite teachers, Alicia Thompson. Hi, Alicia. How are you today?
I'm so great. Thank you for having me.
Well, we crossed paths sort of at an unlikely time. It was one of those times in my life where I felt like I was trying to put together the practices of Byron Katie and really figure out like what's happening outside of me. How is that reflect on what's happening inside of me? And you and I connected through a community called Rise Sister Rise, Rebecca Campbell, and I was so thrilled to find your work, knowing that's only a piece of what you do. But I'm so excited to have you here today to talk about the work and your work. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I am a certified facilitator of the work of Byron Katie through Clarity Coaching. And I found, so in 2012, it's really short, prior to 2012, I was a temple going Mormon, living life like how you're supposed to, living by all the rules, following everything, volunteering at my kids' school, and I was a Weight Watcher coach in the community and, doing all these things. But secretly, behind the scenes, I was having a 5-year affair. And that led into a lot of pain and a lot of hiding. And so I started doing cocaine. And so one night I was giving my cocaine dealer a ride. That's how I got the cheaper cocaine and kept this on the down low, because here I was, still this to everyone else in my life. My husband at the time had no idea any of this was happening. Well, it was a setup for my cocaine dealer, and that night I got arrested. And my life crumbled into pieces. And so I immediately was sober. I was never really addicted to the drug. I was addicted to the numbing. I was addicted to the escaping, which of course later I come to find out it's what I've been doing my whole entire life with whatever kind of mechanism I could find. So a year later, my husband turned to me and he's like, "Do you even love me?" And it was like a lightning bolt in my life of the biggest truth I've ever spoken in my life. And I just said, "No, because I don't love me, or I would never have been here." And it's crazy when this hits me like this, because I can normally say it. And sometimes it just hits me so hard. Like, what a big moment that was in my life to speak that truth. So picked up my kids and left my husband, and I started doing yoga, and I was staring in the mirror at this woman, and I was like, I have to learn how to love this woman staring back at me, because I literally never had. I never knew it was an option. I never knew how to, unless I was doing what everybody told me to do. I didn't know how to live what I wanted. And so through yoga, I discovered a lot of that, became a yoga teacher training. And then when I went to teach my first yoga class, it's like my voice wouldn't come out to lead other people to be so present in their bodies. I couldn't. And so I went to a personal trainer thinking, well, I'll just learn about the body more and I'll feel more comfortable. So I go to this personal trainer, and one day I walk in and I was wearing shorts for the first time ever to work out. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, I've never seen you in shorts." And I'm like, "Because I don't. My thighs are too fat." And she said, "Let's question that thought." And so this is where she introduced me to the work of Byron Katie, because my thighs were too fat, which of course to anyone else in the world, and even to who I am today and where my thighs are at, I'd be like, my thighs were never too fat. But I believed it, no matter what you could say to me, because all my life growing up, my brothers called me thunder thighs. So no matter how thin my thighs got, my world, my perception was I always had thunder thighs. And you couldn't have convinced me otherwise until we questioned the thought. And so we went in and we questioned this thought, and I discovered, I kind of explain it like going through a car wash. Like when we say, "Is this true?" Can you absolutely know this is true? You kind of there's this clearing of the water rinses away. Like, do I absolutely know that's true? And how does it make me feel? And then that's when the like flappy things of the car wash come out and start clearing things. And I'm like, when I think that, I feel this and I feel this, and I'm feeling all these things in my body and they feel really awful. And so who would I be without that thought? And now, it's cleared away some things. And I'm like, I've never known that I had the permission to live without that thought. And now I have this clarity of who I can be without that thought. And then when I'm doing one-on-one sessions with people, we kind of go into like the first childhood memory of having this thought and really seeing like, that was never even my thought. That was what everybody else told me of who I was. And so the work of Byron Katie really cleared up this clearing for me of like going back to my past and discovering like how I learned to live a life to please everyone else. And that would show me my worth. And that BS needs to go away. So that's where I begin with the work of Byron Katie and coming to see, finally having the clarity to give ourselves permission to live life by our values, our standards, and not what everyone else told us we're supposed to.
Well, you can see why you are one of my favorite teachers, because I feel like it is so difficult to be vulnerable. And the first time I called you, I was scared to death because I was like, how am I going to share my truth? And before I even did, you told me your story. And I'm like, oh, well, all right. Well, I'm going to share this with you. But I think that your story and your ability to share your story gives so many people the freedom to be okay with their story.
Yes. My life experiences have given me a depth of compassion that I am so grateful I have. But the things I've been through, the edges of where life has taken me, most people would never allow themselves to go there. And for some reason, that's what this life is about for me. So I'm like, give me the edge, I'll go there. And then I come and share it because it's just a story. It's just a story. That woman that got arrested, that's just some story. I can't prove it to you today. There's no evidence of it, but we carry that, and the guilt and shame from that makes us become who we are today if we don't clear up the healing that needs to come from that, the understanding of why I was ever there. Not because I was a bad person, but because I had a lot to heal.
So, I was always told like things keep coming up, stories, situations, and souls keep coming your way. They may look like different people, but sometimes the lesson is still buried in all these situations and people. And you really gave me the tools to sort of look at situations as though they're not happening to me, they're actually happening for me. So if you think about that, when you think about those situations and you think about your clients and how you really think about situations happening for you rather than to you, how does that materialize?
So for me, we really have to be willing to go in and really sit with our beliefs and our thoughts about certain things because they feel like they're happening to me. My emotions are happening to me. The vision of what I can see, because this is all I can see because it's all I can know. So you can sit there and tell me I need to look at things differently. But until you give me that permission to go in and say why this is so incredibly painful to me, that's what brings the clarity. And that's to me what the work is and what I work with people on is like, okay, this is what's really hard in life right now. Let's look at this thought. What are you believing about it? When did you start believing this? What do you think that says about you? Who would you be without that? And this takes time and space and someone holding you while you go into that vulnerable moment.
Yeah. So when you think about a situation, a client calls you, I call you, and I say, all right, this is what happened to me and this is how I feel about it. You often take me through a series of conversations that say, okay, JJ, let's really look at what happened. Like, let's just say hypothetically, I had a situation with a girlfriend, we were out, she liked somebody and she thought that I was doing like approaching that person. And I would say, that's not happening. And she's like, I'm so mad at you. And then I would call you and say, I don't know what's happening. Why is this all happening?
Yeah. So let's go back in that moment. And so I take you back to that moment like it's a Polaroid. And we go back into that moment. And what's the most stressful, painful thought of that moment? You know, she said I was doing this. And so in that moment, she says you're doing this. Is that true? Is that what's happening? And you're like, no, that's not what's happening. But her perspective is it is. And so how are you reacting in that moment? And that's where it's just our innate response of like, this is how I've always learned to act. When I feel like someone is shutting me off, then I immediately go into this. I feel this, you know, and we're like, I feel hurt. I feel betrayed. I feel shut down. I feel, who's doing that? Who's betraying you in that moment? Who's shutting you down in that moment? That's you. That's you. And it's a protective mechanism somewhere within you. So let's keep going deeper, deeper. How do you see that person? How do you see yourself in that moment? What do you believe this says about you in that moment? And when's the first time you remember feeling that same kind of moment in the youngest age you can possibly remember? And it could be the weirdest thing, like a friend is saying, I'm behaving inappropriately. And I go back to like a friend took a doll away from me. And I'm like, I believe that I have to grasp onto things to find acceptance. I'm not good enough just being who I am. I have to be this bit of extra. And I learned that. So it's just what keeps repeating before I can even realize that's what's repeating within me.
Yeah, so you're saying that we basically have a trigger somewhere in our lives, usually early on, that continues to trigger us in various ways throughout our existence in this body.
Yeah. And I can't see beyond that. That's my perception. That's the perception I created from 4 years old until today. And until I'm willing to go in and sit with it and be with it, and it feels really scary to do that sometimes, but when I'm willing to do that, I can really see then who could I be without that thought? How would I see that person? How would I see myself if there's no way could even occur to me that that's a possibility?
So it's essentially working to adjust your self judgment.
Yes. That we can never see until we're willing to really sit within it.
And so we talk a lot about this in various disciplines, but things that are happening in your life are happening for you. And they're happening for you because they're helping you really get to that next level of awareness and learning. And the questions that you're working with clients are to really get underneath those lessons.
Yes. To find the clarity, to see a different perspective than I've ever seen. That most of the times we don't even know we're allowed to see it without that perspective because it's all I've ever known. How am I supposed to know to look at it beyond that? So
So, what are some of the things? I mean, you've worked with so many women now and through your own journey. I think, what are some of how do you know if women are getting it? Like, how do you know if they're working through the questions and really getting underneath their stories? How do you know?
So for one, at the end, when I say, who would you be without that belief? And, you know, if someone's just like, oh, I'd be kinder, I'd be nicer. Nope. No, you know, and I'd be like, go into your body, like feel it, feel it. I know with one client, I really had to keep saying that. Nope, like go in your body. Don't let your mind tell me. I want you to go into your body until you're feeling that gut response, until you're feeling everything in your body shake. And then they're like, you know, and then things come up. So it's really noticing that they're out of the head and really present in the body for the body to tell you. I really believe that the body will tell us and then the mind will follow. But we've learned to let the mind tell us and just the body does whatever the mind's saying. So we really need to get in a space where we're willing to let the body lead us and then let the mind follow what the body is doing.
So, when women kind of go and approach this work and they say, all right, I'm going to dig under my stories, I'm going to figure out why these types of situations keep sending me into a tailspin. or even a relationship, right? Like people know they're not in the right relationship and it just keeps circling around and around. Do you feel like women, like, do they have to do something else to have the strength to take action? Because once you really kind of figure out why you're in these situations, what comes next?
Yeah, so that's about awakening a part of you and a perspective and a belief in yourself that you haven't known was there. It's about discovering a new perspective, a new belief within yourself. And so when I work with clients, like we start with what's called the wheel of balance, and I kind of balance out the areas of life that truly nourish you. And so we do the wheel of balance, we question a stressful thought, and then they go out in their real life for 2 weeks trying to focus on these areas of their life that truly nourish them. And they're like, and then all these hangups happen. Well, I'm trying to give more to my relationship, but I'm feeling this resistant. He's doing this. Let's question that. He's doing that. So where's your perspective in believing that he is making you feel bad? No one is making you feel bad. You are making yourself feel bad off the belief of what you're perceiving. So let's question that perception. Let's see if we can see it in a different perception.
Okay, we got to do that a different way. That's really good, but like I need to dive in a different way. So we're in a significant relationship, whatever that is for you. That person says something that triggers you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you're controlling. Let's just say that.
Okay.
All of a sudden, then I'll just use myself. I'm like, I get angry. Like I'm not controlling. I'm this and that. You say that all the time. Like how does his words really just is a really just a mirror of how I feel about myself?
So the long version is we would go in and question that, he says you are controlling. Is it true? Yes, he clearly says that. Can you absolutely know that he truly believes you're controlling? Yes, he says that to me. And how do you feel? How do you react when you believe this thought that you are controlling? And, I'm angry and I'm hurt and I'm shut down and I'm all these things and I'm feeling this. But again, these are feelings we're allowing to be in ourselves. And so how do you see him in that moment? I see him as this and this and this and this. I see myself as this and this and this, and this is what it says about me. So go back to that youngest time in your life where you felt this same way. And it may have nothing to do with controlling, but it's where this perception of like, if things don't happen my way, if I can't see the outcome of why things are happening this way, then I go to this and I believe I am this. And we discover what that is. And now he says you're controlling. So who would you be if it can't even occur to you that you're actually controlling? Because the only reason you're reacting is because there's something within you that knows you are being controlling, or you wouldn't react. I mean, somebody could say to me, you're absolutely a lunatic. And I'd be like, okay, that's your perception. Okay, maybe I am kind of crazy, but I like me that way. I don't have an offense to that. I don't have a defense that comes up against that. But if there's a defense mechanism, then there's something in you believing that, or you wouldn't be defensive. And so we open up that window, see who you are without the thought. And at the end, there are turnarounds. He says, I am controlling. I am controlling. Can you find spots? Can you find areas in your life where you are controlling? Yes. Okay. So is there some truth when he says that? Okay. So why do you get so upset?
Because you feel that it's more about like it's a negative connotation where like the control actually allows us to do a lot of things because somebody's behind the scenes getting everything done. But the way it's said to me, it's more of like a negative connotation and not like a value add.
Okay. So if I'm not getting defensive because I've healed everything that causes that defense mechanism in me, I can turn to him and go, tell me where you see I control. Tell me how I could do this differently that you wouldn't see me as controlling. Help me understand how I can show up differently to you that I'm not controlling. And then if he says something and you're like, well, I can't do that. Then that's where we learn to set a boundary. But are we willing to open ourselves up to a newer perspective, a broader perspective, a different point of view than the defensive triggered mechanisms that happen within me? And that's what I want to help people discover. And I feel my gift is that once you know me, like there's nothing you can tell me you murdered somebody. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about it. Why'd you do that? Is it true? Did you really murder somebody? How did you react when you were murdering them? Like there's nothing you're going to say to me that you're going to see me go, oh, there's just not. And so it's a space where I get to talk about my most inner fears and scariness and just let them be what they are and quit trying to like contain them. Like that's the problem.
It is so beautiful. And for someone to create safe space for you to really kind of work through your thought patterns and understand the triggers other people create. Let me rephrase that. The triggers that are out there that you then take on as your own, that then highlight something that you don't feel good about yourself, is such a beautiful thing, because so few people really spend the time to dig into what triggers me and why does it trigger me. And then a little bit more time to let that go.
Yes. And that's what we work on. And that doesn't happen overnight. So I always say to new clients, like commit 10 sessions that we will just in over amount of time, whatever time you need to meet with me for 10 sessions. And we'll continue to question a thought that's come up that feels stressful, that feels defensive, that feels painful. And we'll just question it. And my goal is at the end of those 10 sessions, that this becomes a practice that happens, that either I'm feeling this way and I sit down with the journal and I go through the questions Alicia's walked through with me 10 times. I know these questions, I can hold this space now for myself, because we have this ego that really wants to jump in and keep defending it. And so when I'm holding this space with you and I see that ego jump in, I'm like, is that really true? Is that, how's that make you feel? Again, my stomach's wrenched. Okay, guess who's in control of your stomach? You. He's not wrenching your stomach. You're doing that. So let's just keep going a little bit further till we can get that ego out of the way. And after about 10 sessions, I believe that you can get to a space where you can do these questions on your own, and after 8 years of practicing this, it happens like this with me. The moment I feel defensiveness, I'm like, what are you really believing, Alicia? How are you really reacting? What is this reminding you, taking you back to? Who would you be without this thought? Oh, there I am again, without the defenses. So, but 8 years of constant practice. My mentorship was an entire year of showing up every single week, questioning a thought I had. I mean, it takes time. I think when we start the healing process and we start this, like, I'm going to open my mind and I'm going to widen my perspective and I'm going to be so awake, it takes years. I had 40 years of being the complete opposite. It takes time. It takes many different modalities. And it just takes accepting yourself all the way through. And that's what I believe the work does, is it gets you to a place where I accept my defense mechanisms. I know what they are. I see them. Yes, I do this. And so the next time somebody makes me feel painful or stressed out, I'm like, okay, this is about me. What's happening? Every human being is a mirror for you to understand yourself at a deeper level. That's what this life experience is about, to get to know you, to be the spirit that is living inside this body, experiencing this beautiful life as Alicia, that has to go through all this stuff to heal up. That's why I came. So when the invitation comes that I'm in a lot of pain, sit with it. Sit with it again and again and again. For the 100th time, 12 years later, a friend said to me, like, how much healing do you have to do? I'm like, I don't know. It might be the rest of my life. Took me 40 years to get here. I might be 80 and be like, oh my God, I'm finally ascended. And that's okay. But it's this like, okay, I have to make everything better now, that we don't. It will come when it's meant to come. Life happens for you. Trust the process. Surrender into the process. Trust you're always exactly where you need to be for the exact reason. But that's really hard to surrender into that trust when I'm trying to control life. When I'm working so hard at creating boundaries and making this work just right and showing the world that I have it all together, like that's exhausting. Can we please, as women, give ourselves permission to not? Like it is okay to say life is hard and this sucks ass. It's okay. Life will suck ass sometimes. But it gives me an opportunity to get to know myself a little bit better. Why is this so sucky for me and not somebody else? Like, why is this so painful for me and feels so easy to others? But that's you. That's your journey. What an honor. What an honor.
This is an honor. I just love your work. I just love the way you approach work. It gives us such permission to just be so vulnerable with our feelings and say that hurt and that doesn't feel good and don't say that. But really, it's really about just creating space for yourself to say, why does that hurt? Why do I allow them to poke me like that? I have more control over how I feel, that I'm not going to let this outside person be such a hindrance to me. And I think just giving people space to figure that out is such a beautiful thing.
Yes. And to me, it's about coming to self-acceptance. So we talk a lot about self-love, and you will never truly come to self-love if you don't have self-acceptance all the way. Acceptance for every body part, every emotion you experience, every thought you have. Accept it. Accept it. This is happening for me. And it feels yucky, but I'm going to sit with it and see why this is presenting itself for me.
That's amazing. And it really requires you to be in the moment. And I think a lot of women are just learning how to be like in the moment, right? How to not be reviewing what's already happened or planning for what's ahead. And that presence of just being aware of, why is this happening? What is it poking? What do I need to explore? And I think for many of us, we need to give ourselves that space so that we can get to that new level, that new lesson, that next chapter.
Yes, for sure. So, and that takes a lot of patience and acceptance to allow that time to happen. But it is about that allowance. If I need to accept this about I need to allow the time to find that acceptance.
I love that. And I'm going to open it for questions if anyone on the line has questions. But before we do that, can you just tell us how to find you? I know you're going to you have a profile in Together We Seek Done online, but tell us where else we can find you. And if we feel like we need to do this work with you, how do we reach you?
So the best way right now is Instagram. So I don't have a website right now. I just kind of let it go. I just got to a place where this all felt overwhelming, and I'm like, I'm just going to step back and just go off referral based. And so that's all I'm doing right now. As far as seeing clients, other than my Instagram. So Alicia Kim Joyful, because to me, this life is meant to be joyful. Like we are meant to experience, and even the ugliest, hardest times of my life, I can find the joy that I see now because of that experience. And that's what I want to help others discover for themselves. So Alicia Kim Joyful at Instagram.
And Caitlin put that in the chat if you want to see it. We'll also put it in the show notes. I do want to open it for questions if anyone has this. We're wrapping this up. I think that, for those of you that are joining later or just sort of getting experience to this is happening for you and really diving into our life being a mirror, and that the people surrounding us actually are mirroring just the feelings we're having inside, and that our evolution is more about digging into who we are and how we feel for us to evolve and emerge into that next version of ourselves. It's a lot. It's a lot to wrap your mind around that. So if you have questions, you can come off mute or put it in the chat. And obviously you can reach out to Alicia directly too. I love it. I love it. I would be when I met you too, and I think I said this in the beginning, when I reached out to you initially, I was desperate. I just wanted to really get to that next level of knowing. And when I called you, I was scared to death to even talk to you about anything that made me vulnerable. But your vulnerability created space for me to be vulnerable. And I just really want to thank you for doing that, because I think women are so afraid to not have it all together, and you make it so easy to just be and share and just dive into what's not working.
Yes. Thank you. That's the biggest compliment.
Well, you are delightful, and I couldn't be more
Thank
honored
you.
to have you part of this network. And so thank you for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you here next time.